So I'm here with Arthur Lupia, and we are going to talk for just a minute about messages and how specific types of messages may or may not resonate with legislators in particular. So I want to ask you this pretty straightforward question. If a scientist, assuming that he or she has done his or her homework and has figured out what a legislator's goal is and how to align what they want to do in a conversation with that goal, how do they construct a message that will resonate and will be memorable and will stick in that legislator's mind?
Here's the optimal way to do it, and you can't always do this. If I knew who the legislator's target audience was, and I knew what that audience worried about as they were going to sleep, or talked to themselves about as they traveled from room to room, or kind of dreamed about as they were waking up, those are a person's core concerns. And the closer I can get what I'm saying to, here's how you can take the next step towards your aspiration, the more likely I am to have an audience. So it always has to start there. I think of communication as an away game. When somebody's going to learn something, almost all of the interesting things happen between their ears. So I have to get as close as I can to a person's core concern and then figure out how can I stay true to my science and say something that will help them see how they can take the next step, because that will motivate them to want to learn more and engage me. And I think that's how we really create a situation where learning occurs.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I guess to sort of zoom out a little bit, how do you go about gaining that degree of knowledge if you want to construct that type of memorable message that really resonates?
So one thing that's counterintuitive is when I talk to people about persuasion, I think persuasion is 95% listening and 5% talking, right? And so, if I can gather data, I will gather data about what people's core concerns are, but a lot of times you can't. So it means immersing yourself in the population as much as you can and trying to listen to what people are talking to each other about, what they're agreeing about, what they're fretting about, what they're dreaming about. And then as I listen to that, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I speak to that with the research that I have? So I'm trying to gather as much data as I can. And sometimes I have real data, and sometimes I just have to go in the room and be a fly on the wall for as long as they'll let me do it. And then I come in and I try to provide a service to them.
Yeah.
I try to speak in their conversation as opposed to trying to impose anything on them.
So sure. So without putting you on the spot too much, can you give us an example, a concrete example of how you've gauged that audience and then shaped what you wanted to say on the fly?
So, I can tell you when it's hardest. I've worked a lot in countries outside the U.S. I worked a great deal on the Colombian peace process in 2016. And so, that's a case where I had some information from the pollsters, but I wasn't sure that the polls were reliable. So we were looking at regional and local newspapers. We were looking at types of civic protests. And the question, the initial conversation wasn't about the peace process. It was the government was doing all these things to alleviate poverty, but they were telling the story in terms of statistics. And they were making a lot of the same mistakes that people who communicate science do here, right? They were saying, we did 50,000 of this and 100,000 of this. And folks who could have opportunities to live better lives, go to better hospitals, have better schools, were missing out on them because the government wasn't telling the story correctly.
Got it.
So I had to, and the government people were frustrated. They said, we have all these programs and no one's using them. So I had to try and redirect everybody to say, this is what people are saying about what they want. This is what people are saying about what the government's doing. We have to take these government-focused narratives and turn them into the story of a child, the story of a village, and how this government program have helped them. And if we can tell the story the right way, and then we can say, and we're doing this in all of your villages, and here are the numbers. And the numbers mean something once you have the personal story. But this was a situation where I had to change how the president's team, I worked with the president directly, was thinking about communication. And so we all had to take the perspective of the target audience as opposed to the perspective of their White House.
Absolutely. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Dr. Lupia. I'd really like to express my appreciation for you sharing your thoughts on messaging.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you and your team for all that you're doing to improve science communication.